everybody. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the call today and thank you all for joining us for our conversation with the Associate Dean for the College of Arts and Letters here at Michigan State University, Cara Cilano. My name is Julia Stroman and I will be acting as one of your moderators today. Just a little bit about myself. I'm going into my junior year and I'm a double major in arts and humanities and psychology with a minor in documentary production. I'm also currently a student intern with the College of Arts and Letters Development Department here at MSU. So before we begin, for anybody who is new to Zoom, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So throughout the call, if you have any questions for Associate Dean Cilano, feel free to submit them through the Q&A button and we will keep track of them and propose them to Dr. Cilano for you. I would also like to let everyone know that this event is being recorded and will later be uploaded to the College of Arts and Letters YouTube channel for anyone who wants to go back and watch something that they may have missed, or for anybody who is unable to attend today. With that being said, the only faces you'll see are those of the presenters, so you don't have to worry about your camera or microphone. And now that that's all out of the way, I would like to introduce my co-moderator today, Jair Leggett.
Beautiful, thank you, Julia. Hi everyone, my name is Jair Leggett. I am a fourth year undergraduate student who's also going into my final semester as a student worker through the College of Arts and Letters English Language Center. I'm finishing my degree this coming fall semester in sociology, but I'm tied to the College of Arts and Letters in a few ways. One of them being a current TESOL certificate program I'm working on with ELC Director Dustin DeFelice, and the other being a previously declared Spanish major and minor. I wanted to make a quick note that I spent my last semester studying abroad in Thessaloniki, Greece. This was cut short due to COVID, so I have some pretty strong emotional ties here, and I'm really excited to get some of these questions I have answered tonight along with the audience. I want to thank you, Associate Dean Cilano, for letting me co-host this event, and I want to pass the floor back to you, Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jair. I would now like to give a warm introduction to our speaker today, Dr. Cara Cilano. She is currently the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies here in the college, and she is also a professor of English. Since Dr. Cilano joined the Department of English in 2016 as a chairperson, she has joined the editorial board of the MSU Press, participated as a fellow in the Big Ten Academic Alliance Leadership Program, and served as a secretary of the American Institute of Pakistan Studies. And today, Dr. Cilano will be discussing our plans for returning to campus this fall, the safety protocols MSU has for our community, and faculty online and hybrid classes for MSU students. So with that, please join me in giving a warm Spartan welcome to Associate Dean Cara Cilano. Dr. Cilano, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Julia and Jair, for that introduction and the welcome. I couldn't be more pleased with my co-hosts today. I'm very excited to be here with Julia and Jair, with the Spartan alumni and friends who are joining us, and the new and returning Spartan parents. Thank you for taking the time out on this Thursday afternoon, as everybody's days just bleeding into each other. Mine sure are, but it's great that you had the time to join us today. Before I launch into my overview of what we've been doing in the college and at the university to prepare for the fall semester, I want to recognize the absolutely extraordinary times in which we're living. We're experiencing tremendous loss due to the COVID pandemic and the ongoing violence of racial injustice, to which the Black Lives Matter movement draws our attention. So I'd like to pause for a moment to acknowledge this pain and trauma and the hope for a better future. Thank you. You may be aware that MSU has adapted its famous Spartan's Will motto so that it speaks to the challenges we're facing. Now we say, together we will. I really appreciate this adaptation because it's inclusive. It automatically invites everyone to engage with what it is we're dealing with through that plural pronoun we. I'm an English professor, so I like grammar. That's the first note that I want to strike today, that we're working together to protect the health and safety of our whole community. And these efforts speak both to our pandemic-related preparations and our ongoing work at creating and ensuring respect, equity, and justice for everybody. The second note that I want to strike is one of humility. For all of the smart people working on these matters, we're finding certainty elusive. We need to be flexible, to seek out as much new information and analysis as possible, and to reflect upon how our values must drive our actions. So while I have lots of plans to share with you today, we've been very busy, I need to preface everything with, as of right now, the plan is, because we are open to adapting and changing as the situation dictates. We recognize the desire for certainty. We want it too. But our best way to achieve certainty is to anticipate contingencies. In fact, the university has spun up 23 subcommittees to engage the many facets of returning to campus safely. And of course, with a great relief for all of us, our new president is an infectious disease specialist. So we have that added layer of trust in his judgment. I'm going to touch upon 4 key topics in my overview in the hopes that my comments will generate your questions and contributions, which may lead us to other areas of interest. Remember, as Julia said, to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. These 4 topics are, first, the preparations for fall that the faculty and staff are taking. Second, the safeguards for in-person instruction and campus life generally. Third, the prioritization of diversity and equity initiatives, including international ones. And fourth, the budget realities we're now facing because of the pandemic. You can follow up on much of what I'll be talking about by visiting several university and college websites. We'll be emailing you the URLs to all of those sites, and they're updated pretty much daily as information changes, so that you can be sure that you're fully prepared and informed. So to that first topic that I mentioned, the preparations for fall by faculty and staff. We started the summer shooting to have 50% of our classes online, 25% of our classes delivered in a hybrid mode, which means that there is some in-person aspect to that class, and 25% in-person instruction. Now, the reason why we went 50, 25, 25 was largely because of space. If we're going to practice proper social distancing, we had to think about what kind of spatial capacity we had in our instructional facilities. And so we understood that at the most, we could have 25% fully in-person classes and 25% hybrid classes. On the whole, by which I mean across the university as a whole, in the aggregate, we're pretty much there to these percentages. Though I can say, as we break that down to undergraduate experience and graduate experience, first year, second year, third year, fourth year in the undergraduate experience, we're seeing that the undergrads are going to be largely online, that their modes of instruction will be largely online. And that could be synchronous, which means they're all joining on a Zoom call like we are right now for that interaction, or it could be asynchronous, in which the instructor is posting things in a learning management system, and the students are then checking in and doing their work on their own time. If you are the parent of a new student, you know that your student went through the new student orientation online. We deliberately shifted new student orientation online, 1, because of social distancing, and 2, as a way to get new students used to our systems and how to engage with us online. So your new students, our new first year students and our new transfer students are getting that experience already. And they're seeing what it's like to engage with advisors online, which is going to be really a crucial thing to their success. When it comes to instruction, we've prepared very, very thoroughly. The College of Arts and Letters is incredibly fortunate to have the highest caliber academic technology team on campus. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in the College of Arts and Letters. This is the truth. My colleagues in academic technology are really smart, they're really resourceful, and they have spent the summer, along with some centralized units at the university, providing training in online and hybrid instruction to all of the faculty. And I can tell you hundreds and hundreds of faculty members have taken advantage of these professional development opportunities, all with the goal of providing high quality online instruction to our students in the fall. We have also created what we're referring to as a pattern book for hybrid courses. Because hybrid courses can take lots of different forms, we wanted to show our faculty, give our faculty a resource for high quality delivery of hybrid courses. And we've also prepared what we're calling a go bag. So for those courses that have started hybrid or in person, in the event we have to shift again to completely online instruction because of an outbreak, we also have the resources available for faculty to know how to shift their class from in-person or hybrid to fully online so that it's a seamless experience for the students. It's really important that our students don't experience disruption in their learning. In addition, in the college, you may know that we have an experiential learning requirement, which is, Jair just talked about having been in Greece, having his study abroad semester in Greece cut short, unfortunately, by the pandemic. But study abroad, study away, internships, undergraduate research, these are things we think of as experiential learning, that they're getting the students outside the classroom and giving them the space to be very active learners. We've really taken up the challenge that the pandemic has issued us and created opportunities for our students, including virtual internships. So one of the resources that we've developed, we're working with a partner called the Global Remote Internship Program. You'll get the URL in the follow-up email for that organization. They help us place 2 students this summer in international internships. So we have a humanities pre-law student who's serving as a business analyst intern at a law firm in Belgium. And then we have a graphic design student who is serving as a graphic design intern at an organization in Dublin. And then we have another student, a philosophy major, who is a research intern at Wayne State over, in Detroit, helping them with their HIGH program, which is a student support program. So we're still finding ways to connect students to high impact learning experiences, even in the midst of the pandemic. We've got our departments too are making plans, and I know that many parents here may be interested in what their students' major is doing. And so I can speak a bit to the Experience Architecture program, the Public and Professional Writing program, the way that they're centering the student experience and building ways to continue to facilitate networking for their students. Our theater department is working really hard to think about how they can create and sustain in safe and healthy ways experiences for our performance students. So all of these things continue to be in the works and responsive to the shifts in, say, the governor's orders or where the virus is going. So that's the overview for the preparations that we're taking so far for fall by the faculty and the staff. I'm happy to pursue other questions on that. I'm going to move though to the safeguards for the in-person instruction that will be happening, as well as campus life generally. And breaking this down to arriving on campus, which will happen in just a matter of weeks if you have a student who's going to be here in residence, and then as classes begin, which will happen a few days after you arrive on campus. One of the most important things that you may already be aware of is that we've had a change in the academic calendar. All in-person instruction will end before Thanksgiving. And so when if the students leave for Thanksgiving, they have no need to come back to campus, right? And so that change in the academic calendar is meant to keep the students from going back and forth too much, which is a way that we're trying to, make sure that populations are safe. You may have also seen some communication about President Stanley's Campus Compact, which is basically an agreement that he's asking all faculty, staff, and students to sign off on, which says that they will practice, they will comply with new university public health directives, including wearing a face mask on campus, practicing good hygiene, practicing social distancing, all of these things. He's also created a hotline if people have concerns because compliance doesn't seem to be happening. All students will receive care kits, which will include 2 masks, some wipes, and some hand sanitizer. You may have seen yesterday, actually earlier in the week, it was the 28th, the president did issue a communication in which he was talking about the need for students coming in from outside of Michigan to self-isolate for 2 weeks. These are students coming in from any other, well, not any other state in the country, states that are currently hotspots according to a COVID map that I can share with you the URL, and students coming in internationally. That self-isolation is really wearing a face covering, socially isolating or socially distancing, just practicing really carefully to make sure that you're not going to spread. In addition, the dorms and the dining halls are being set up to comply with all of these directives. And we'll send you the URL for the best and most up-to-date information on dorms and dining. That's a little bit outside of the College in Arts and Letters. So I want to point you to the resources that are going to give you the best information. Once classes begin, students are going to see things are different, you know, in terms of just walking into a classroom or walking into a classroom building. There's going to be a lot of signage, and the signage is going to point you to, you know, how much is 6 feet, for example. When you walk into a classroom, students are going to see that a lot of furniture has been removed, or if there's fixed furniture, that seats are tied up, that they're strapped closed, so that we have the socially distanced minimums in the classroom. There'll be places for the instructor to be that are at least 6 feet from where the students are. We're going to increase the cleaning schedules, our facilities management people, and there'll be sanitizing stations everywhere. I'm going to just pause for a second to see if Julia Jair had anything to throw my way.
Thank you, Dr. Cilano. Thank you for the overview. We did have a clarification question. Could you explain a bit more what hybrid classes will look like?
Sure. So there will be a range in terms of what hybrid classes will look like. In its most traditional form, a hybrid class, say a class is scheduled to meet on a Monday and a Wednesday. Most traditionally, a hybrid course will say, on Monday, we will meet in person in this place for these hours. On Wednesday, we may meet synchronously, which means we may also meet at the exact same time we would have met on Monday, but we'll do that online. Or there'll be some kind of asynchronous instruction. So you would have a balance between in-person and online. Other versions of hybrid could be completely different than that. It could be we have certain kinds of moments every other week where we all get together, again, in a socially distanced and responsible way. Jair, did you have something for me?
I did. I have a quick scenario I want to throw your way. So actually, let's say, for instance, I have a student who's living on campus. They become sick with COVID, right? Am I, as the parent, able to come in, pick the student up, and take them right home, or am I going to have troubles with that? Do they have to stay on campus, or how does that look?
Right. So the most up-to-date information on the Together We Will website, which is really the clearinghouse for everything that's happening for these fall preparations and all of our guidelines, say that a student has a choice. They can self-isolate, and we will have specific locations where they can do so. One of the dorms and the Kellogg, which some of our audience members may know, the hotel here on campus, will have that space, and students will be able to have food delivered to them and be taken care of in those ways. Or a parent can come and get their child. This is what the present guidelines are saying according to the Together We Will website.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else for me right now?
There is another question. What is Plan B and potentially Plan C and D for when outbreaks do occur this fall and or in the spring semester?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Plan B, C, and D, I think really comes down to how, I don't want to say thoroughly because that gives us a false sense of security, but how the university can manage what might be an outbreak, and that's a question of numbers and something we have less control over, what the state decides to do. So if the state if the governor issues some kind of return to a shelter in place, then the university clearly has to comply with that. In that kind of instance, we will likely shift to a remote teaching scenario. So those classes that were in person or hybrid will go online. The ones that have been online, that started online, will just continue in the same ways that they were before. I do know that one of the campus reopening committees is looking at the spring semester and plotting out in terms of calendar and all of those sorts of things, how we will respond if we have another flare-up in the winter when flu season starts, and all of this, and we're all inside again because it's Michigan and it's cold, that they are planning, a series of kind of like a decision tree, if this then that sort of scenario. And that, as I say, includes thinking about the calendar. Okay? Are we good? Anything else for me for now?
No more questions at the moment.
Okay. So I'm going to move to the third key point that I wanted to raise, which was the prioritization of diversity and equity initiatives, including international ones. So I've broken this down into two sort of subcategories: the college's engagement at the university level, and then what we're doing in the college. So at the university level, our dean, Chris Long, has been co-chairing the university-wide search for a chief diversity officer. And this is really a momentous occasion at Michigan State University, to be looking for such a person. It's the creation of this position, and we're really interested in getting a leader on campus who can really spearhead our colleges and the university's investment in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Dean Long has had a guiding hand in that. In addition, and some parents may not know this if you're new to MSU, the College of Arts and Letters has a huge responsibility when it comes to general education. And general education is the core of every MSU undergraduate's learning experience. Although we're a small college, we actually touch every single undergraduate who comes through MSU. This is a huge responsibility, and it's a huge opportunity. We've been listening to students over the past several years saying that they want their general education experience to be infused, to center diversity and equity issues. And because we have this ability, and we're the humanists and artists on campus, we are eager to reshape our contributions to the general education curriculum to reflect just those student desires. So there's a whole shared governance thing in terms of how we shape the curriculum, but those are efforts that we've had, we initiated this past academic year that will carry through into the coming academic year. We're very excited about that opportunity. Within the college, some of you may know, because we've certainly publicized this far and wide, this fall we are launching the department, not the program anymore, but the Department of African American and African Studies. And we are thrilled. We hired a new chair. She started, it's Ruth Nicole Brown. She started, I want to say, in mid-July. I'm trying to think when she started showing up at our chairs meetings. And we are very, very excited to have this department. It is the 9th department in the College of Arts and Letters, and it's really the cornerstone of everything we want to do in the college. In addition, we have several programs that speak to diversity and equity, but both our American Indian and Indigenous Studies program and our Women and Gender Studies program are working hard with respect to recruitment and community-engaged research to infuse the student experience with diversity and equity issues. Jair mentioned he's been a student in the English Language Center. They help acclimate all of our international students to life in the United States at an American university, and the ELC is inviting, that's the English Language Center, the ELC is inviting American students to serve as what they call cultural informants in the ELC courses. So even though our American students right now may not be able to travel internationally, they can still engage with our international students and just make a new friend, but really learn a lot about other places while they're even talking about what it's like to be an American. And then we have a Global Studies of Arts and Humanities program. It's a major and a minor, and they're doing up a new course on global citizenship. So we've got a lot going on in the college with respect to diversity and equity. We're very excited about it. It's one of our key values. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of key points are the budget realities that we're facing. It's true, and you've seen this in the news. I'm sure it's all over the place in the news about how higher ed across the country is really facing some hard times because of the pandemic. I can tell you that that's true at Michigan State. And again, the university communications have made this clear that this is something we're facing. You may not be surprised if you know Dean Chris Long, that the process that we're taking as we're doing a budget review and a budget reduction is values-based. And we've engaged many of our colleagues, faculty and staff colleagues in the college, to help us make these decisions. Our primary value, though, here is preserving the quality of our undergraduate mission. The educational mission is the most important thing we can do. So we want to be sure that that remains a high quality experience for our undergraduates. It's very important for us. And we're really looking to maintain the students' experiences in all of our majors and our minors. I am happy to go into additional detail on any of these points that I've raised, or to just open up to additional questions that Jair and Julia have for me.
Yeah, I actually have a question to follow up with some of the things you said about diversity. I know in my experience at MSU as a whole, I've had a very wide array of professors, and moving forward with COVID, maybe less staffing and whatnot, we got a question regarding the diversity in the classroom. How likely is it for us to be in classrooms with a professor of color? Do we have a very diverse faculty here?
Yeah. Within the College of Arts and Letters, we have made really tremendous strides in diversifying our faculty. I don't have hard numbers off the top of my head, but I can tell you this. I came to MSU 4 years ago as chair of the English department. And in the time that I was there, and in fact, they all just got tenured to associate professor, so I'm thrilled for all my colleagues. We did significant hiring of faculty of color in the Department of English. To the point now, it's a faculty of just about 40 people. I would say it's easily a third, almost to half faculty of color. So we've really made a lot of strides in recruiting and retaining. And these are just brilliant. They're brilliant scholars and teachers. They've completely enlivened our departmental life. So we've made a lot of strides forward on that.
Thank you.
We do have another question. Does MSU anticipate allowing for any overseas study for students in the spring semester? Also, if students can't obtain that experiential option due to COVID, will the Cal requirement be waived for those students?
So the spring semester is still open for further consideration. You may know that our Office of International Programs has said that they aren't going to okay student participation in any sort of study abroad program through the fall. They're waiting to make a call on the spring, again, because conditions can change really, really quickly. And if it's impossible for students to do that, yes, there is that possibility of a waiver, or we'll find other ways. I mean, we can still engage students in undergraduate research, for example. I mentioned the virtual internships. You know, there are ways that the faculty are being really creative to give students experiential learning opportunities. We will not let it, however, be an obstacle to a student's degree completion.
Thank you. And I know, Jair, you mentioned that you were actually overseas when the quarantine hit. Do you have anything to add to this conversation?
Yeah, it was actually very interesting. I would say that studying abroad is kind of what made my MSU experience complete. And I think that without having the experience abroad, I would have felt like I was kind of leaving college without having the full experience. So in that sense, I think while I was in Greece, I learned so much, and it was cut super short. I think we were cut short over a month and a half of time due to COVID. And I'm wondering, how do we get that substitution for like that kind of experience if we're not able to go forth with studying abroad?
Right. I mean, you're right, because I too did study abroad when I was an undergraduate, and I've taken undergraduates to other countries to study. I know that it's transformative, you know, and there's absolutely nothing like it. I mean, the first time that you like ride public transit in another country, you're like so proud of yourself, you know. It's unbelievable. And so it would be really hard to replicate that kind of lived experience. But I think things through like the English Language Center, right? And finding ways to connect with our international students who themselves, I mean, you can imagine if you're an international student living here in East Lansing and you've not been able to go home, right? Because of the pandemic, how very much you would appreciate the opportunity to connect and to feel welcomed and belong, and that sense of belonging. So I think that's going to be a really key way. And I do think these virtual internships, as I pointed out, 2 of our students are, you know, one's Belgium and the other's Dublin. They're getting some sense of different cultural norms and practices just because the organizations with which they're working are international. You know, they pale in comparison to actually being their boots on the ground. But it's the best that we can do for now. And our Office of International Programs is consistently looking for how to support students in just these sorts of endeavors.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Julia, I actually have a question for you, since you are serving as an intern right now. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. I'm doing a remote internship.
There we have it. So I'm curious, you know, how is the learning experience in an internship? Like, how is it making you think about your coursework? How is your coursework making you think about your internship? You know, what is that like?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's definitely been very interesting, and I will say I'm very fortunate that I was able to continue my internship, so I'm just grateful that I was able to do that. But it definitely, it's different, because at the end of, obviously when quarantine hit, and we were all transitioning to online classes, it was harder, you know, everyone kind of had to find their footing. But going into the internship, you know, being more prepared, and that's, I assume, how this next school year will be. It's been very nice, and I definitely think that I've still been able to take a lot out of it. I can't necessarily compare it to how it would have been if, you know, we were in person, but I can say that it's definitely still been a worthwhile experience for me, and I have high hopes for how the school year is going to look too.
Good. Yeah, I mean, since both of you are seasoned undergraduates, you went through that transition to remote learning, which was abrupt for absolutely all of us. Do you have things for the fall that you're thinking, oh, this will be interesting, maybe something that you're looking forward to? Or do you feel, you know, I got a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen?
Personally, I think I have a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen. I think my fall semester is all online. And so in the past, I really liked online classes because I'm able to look at my course load and kind of divide it between the days. Whereas now I'm afraid because every single day I have all of these classes, and with all of the work online, how am I really going to be able to balance out, do I have time here to do this, or do I have time there to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and this actually is a question that I did want to ask you, Dr. Cilano, because for me, when COVID was just kind of starting, we had a death in the family due to the coronavirus.
Oh,
So that created a bit of tension between like me trying to deal with that end of everything, as well as, the changing environment, but also trying to keep up with my schoolwork.
yeah.
So do you have any advice for students going into the school year, if situations like that were to occur, like how they could balance their schoolwork with their personal life and their health and safety concerns?
Yeah, I'm very sorry for your loss, Julia. That must have been, very traumatic for you and your family. There's a couple of things that I'm thinking about, both to your question and Jair's. One is the difference in learning when you're in an online environment than when you're in a face-to-face class. There is a website on that our participants will get the URL for this, that has guidelines for students on how to learn online. Because just as Jair was saying, it's a different kind of experience altogether, and it requires different time management skills. So there is a resource to help students understand that shift. But when it comes to, life happening sort of like in stereo, because we're living in a pandemic, how do you deal with this sort of thing? I think one of the first things that students need to know is reach out to your professor or instructor and let them know, because they too are similarly experiencing this disorientation. They are a sympathetic lot to begin with, but they will be even more so, right? In order to help students get through. Our primary goal as faculty and as staff is the student success. So we want to be sure that we're helping them as much as possible. If you have issues, that's what my job is for, right? If you're not having, if you're having some issues communicating with your professor, come speak to your friendly associate dean. She can help too. Jair, what would you want to say?
Yes, it looks like we have another question that came in. We're wondering, in light of undergrad values-based budget cuts, will there be an increase in faculty to student ratios in general education classes or in other College of Arts and Letters gateway courses? And what are the estimated 2020 to 2021 ratios compared with 5 years ago?
Right. Right now, because of when the budget realities are going to hit, or the budget changes are going to hit, and when we schedule classes, these calendars did not align. Let me put it that way. Everything is going to be very much as it was last year, which means the general education courses like Integrative Studies in the Arts and Humanities, which is IAH colloquially, right? That's what everybody on campus calls it. They will range, class sizes there will range anywhere from 35 students to several hundred. If it's one of those large lecture classes, and Julie or Jair, I'd be curious to hear what your IAH experience was like. Those large lecture classes break down on Fridays into small recitation sections, which are like roughly 25 to 30 students apiece. So there's a way that the student is in that large lecture, but then still has that more intimate setting. Our first year writing courses, which, as the title suggests, is the place that all first year students go, remain very small comparatively. They max out at 27 students. And we find, again, in the College of Arts and Letters, in this, our large general education footprint, we recognize that it's in that first year writing course that many MSU students, not just Cal students, but MSU students come to feel like they belong because their professor knows their name. And then when it comes to working in your major, And Julia, you could attest to this. Well, Jair, you too, because you were doing the Spanish major and minor. You know, those classes, we're almost like a tiny liberal arts college in the midst of a Research One university. You know, our classes, our upper level classes, are small. You know your classmates, you know your professor, and they know you, which is the nice sort of reciprocity that operates there.
Thank you for that. We also have another question. How is faculty and staff morale these days in Cal? Embracing the challenges or scared to death of all the unknowns?
It depends on the day, you know. Now, I would say, you know, we've worked really hard from the dean's office, which if you're familiar with our campus is in Linton Hall, through to the departments and the programs, to build a sense of solidarity, to build a basis of trust and goodwill. We have what we call the culture of care operating in the college, which is meant to include everybody, faculty, staff, students, everybody, where we're really looking out for each other's well-being. And so that groundwork that we've been laying since Dean Long came 5 years ago, I think is really helping us get through. It's hard though, because you know people are experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. So I mean, I'm only partially joking when I say everybody has their good day and everybody has their bad day.
Kind of a follow-up question to go after what we were talking about before this last topic. I'm not sure if you would have the answer to this or not, but in terms of classes where you have a lab required, like chemistry, for example, and students who are on track to get a degree and a major that requires lab work. What does a student who is afraid to come to campus because of COVID do in terms of completing lab work? Because, you know, it's kind of mandatory that you're there in person.
Yeah. Well, two things I would say. First and foremost, any student who is facing a class with a lab requirement should talk to their advisor and find out what options are operating. What I understand from my counterparts in the other colleges, including the College of Natural Science, which is where chemistry is housed, for example, some of those chemistry labs, some of them, not all of them, can be done remotely, remarkably. You know, I'm not entirely sure how they do that. You know, I read a book. I'm a literature professor. I don't know how you do a chemistry lab at home, but apparently some of them you can, and some of them obviously you cannot because of the chemicals themselves. So I do know that there's a little bit of a range in terms of that ability to do a lab remotely or online, and to have to be in place in person in one of the lab facilities. But it's really most important to speak to an advisor because they'll be the best informed on that point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We have another question. Do you have any information regarding fraternities and sororities pertaining to the COVID outbreaks?
I do not, and I apologize for that. That's largely because the fraternities and sororities are dealt with on the student affairs, centrally in a student affairs office, and they don't touch the academic side of the house or anything having to do with specific academic colleges.
Do you know, Dr. Cilano, is there a place where we can find information regarding sororities and fraternities?
I imagine so, and I'll do a quick, when we're done with this call and before the follow-up email goes out, I'll do a quick search on our website for the office that has responsibility for Greek life to see what they're communicating out to those organizations.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we just had another question pop up. You discussed the learn from home option. If a student selects that option, is there a minimum number of credits that are required for it?
I don't believe there are a minimum number of credits, but do keep in mind, and for returning parents, this is most germane, I suppose. New parents, it won't matter. It's just how it is. We do have flat rate tuition now at Michigan State University, and that covers from 12 to 18 credit hours. 12 hours meaning full time. So if a student is going for financial aid to there's usually provisions that require them to be enrolled full-time, which is at minimum 12 hours.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Cilano. It looks like we have another question in. Can you explain what it means when we hear that MSU is teaching classes in pop culture?
I can, because those pop culture classes are being taught by my colleagues in the English department. So it's a full range, so pop culture, and it might seem counterintuitive, but pop culture has been an academic subdiscipline for several decades. In fact, it really kind of got its start here at Michigan State University. So it can look at things like genre fiction. So I personally love a good espionage novel, or crime fiction, or something like that. We have particular strengths now, and it's in large measure due to the fact that our library has the largest comics archive in the country. We have a particular strength in comics as pop culture. And a number of my colleagues engage students in some experiential learning and digging through that archive. We also have colleagues with particular strengths in Afrofuturism and science fiction, in music too. So it's really, I think, a fantastic way to engage students because we're all immersed in pop culture, right? How frequently do we stop and think like, how does that make meaning? What historical references is it making? And all kinds of things. So it's actually, you can tell I get pretty excited about it. Let me talk about spy fiction, right? I get really excited. So yeah, it's a way of saying, this stuff surrounds us. How is it actually, making meaning for us?
We do have another question. So aside from these lovely webinars, obviously, how would one stay up to date with everything going on at MSU around COVID?
Yeah. So the websites that we'll be sending are the centralized place. You can appreciate MSU is huge, and so it's taken a Herculean effort to kind of establish like one website that's going to be the central place to get the updates. But it's the Together We Will. So I think it's msu.edu/Together We Will, if I'm not mistaken, but you'll get the URL, and that's really the place to go.
Okay, Dr. Cilano, I have one question from you that I actually compiled myself.
Okay.
So last semester, I got stuck in this situation. I'm not sure if you know about anything kind of going on off campus or in regards to off-campus housing. What may happen if a student chooses to attend in-person classes halfway through the semester, classes are moved solely online, so that student no longer requires to live on or off campus. Has there been any communication with off-campus housing, kind of the popular housing like Skyview, the Hub, Landmark, in terms of leases and whether students are going to be stuck in their lease despite COVID?
Right. I do not know for sure what the nature of those conversations are. There is a subcommittee, one of these 23 subcommittees for the return to campus that is looking at just residents, right? So I imagine they're having those conversations because we know a huge number of our students live right around campus in some of these apartment buildings and the houses and everything. And we recognize that becomes a real financial liability if we move to remote learning. Yeah.
Thank you.
We did have another question. So given the precautions that MSU is taking, what if there's a student who still may not feel as safe in one of their classes? What would their options be?
Okay. So I'm curious about what that means, doesn't feel as safe. So is that doesn't like the idea of being in person, has, maybe is wearing a mask, but doesn't feel as though that's providing enough. the first thing I would do is talk to the instructor and talk to the student's advisor, because there is the possibility of moving that student into an online course that may fulfill the same requirement or otherwise work towards degree progression, or that faculty member may have an ability to help out a little bit. If that student, though, and this comes at the question in another way, if that student has some kind of pre-existing issue, a health issue, and that could be, a respiratory issue, or it could be a mental health issue, we would direct them to the Resource Center for Persons with Disability. Through that office, they can get what on campus we call a visa. And that visa is simply something that student could present to a faculty member that says, here are my issues and here are the accommodations that will help me succeed in the class.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To kind of turn the table on that, I have the question. So let's say that a student is in in-person classes and the professor becomes ill of COVID. Are all of the students in all of that professor's classes required to self-quarantine for 14 days, or how do we go about that?
So we're working right now, and that we that I mentioned is the myself and my counterparts in the other colleges, so the Associate Deans for Undergraduate Education in the other colleges. We're working right now with another one of the reopening subcommittees on contact tracing to figure out what protocols need to be in place if something like that happens, if a student or the instructor in a class is diagnosed, it tests positive, what happens to everybody else? Does that mean self-isolation for everybody? So we're waiting on the development of protocols that will help us direct that. To inflect your question in a little bit of a different way, say it's an online class and the professor gets sick, the units themselves, the departments themselves are building what we're affectionately terming buddy systems, right? So that there could be someone else who could come in and take care of the students, take care of the class, if that instructor is incapacitated.
Very nice, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We did have another question pop up. What will Cal do for its students to keep them from going crazy just staying in their rooms all the time, since so many of them have every class of theirs online?
Yeah. I mean, this is a huge question, and it's a question that I know my colleagues across the campus are asking. As the audience members may know, President Stanley has said on several occasions that if faculty and staff can work remotely, they should work remotely. But what that means is that the students may not have much by way of anything to do on campus. And even if they do find things to do, they're going to be under the same sorts of directives in terms of how many people can gather, where they can gather, how far apart they need to be. So that's something that we're working, each academic unit is working on, but so are the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods is how we refer to the dorms, right? Trying to figure out, in what ways can we do programming? Can clubs meet? Can social groups meet? How will we do that? How will we reserve spaces? So these are nuts we're trying to crack, because we recognize that the students are coming for an experience.